actually investing in women leads to stronger communities, apart from the economic growth. So, like you have a phenomenal program of 10,000 women entrepreneurs. So, can you share few of those details?
We do two programs with the gender lens. The first program is the Women Startup Program, which works with women innovators in the early idea and revenue stages. So when they are still in their 0 to 1 stage, can we guide them to product market fit? The second program is growth stage, where the founders have been in the business for 3 to 5 years. The foundations are reasonably strong. We believe that any change through an education intervention or a mindset change can put these ventures on a growth path. So it's a program focused on creating growth and scale with a woman founder. So there are two parallel programs that run. They're somewhat vestibuled by design, but not by intent. And between those two programs, just to give a sense, last year we touched about,
like, your deep understanding about the sector in India is like making me understand the skill gap, but the good competition. Here, when I'm seeing the stats, after US, China, and UK, India's like the one of the top leading startup ecosystem that we contain.
yes, we are.
So, are you saying that we have a larger scope of growth compared to the other nations, or in what way are we having the advantage because of the skilled population that we might generate? We will be generating.
I think I will look at skilled population. I will also look at quality of innovation. I will also look at opportunity for what I said, partnership between entrepreneurs, corporates, and science and technology labs. These three taken together is a powerful force. It's almost like a perfect storm. For us, as we are the third largest ecosystem just in volume of number of startups, and one metric is the quantum of venture funds that gets raised within early and growth stages. We are the third largest ecosystem globally. That ecosystem itself is a virtuous cycle, right? Because we are the third largest ecosystem, it feeds off itself. Founders are able to help other founders. The complementary ecosystem like incubators, corporates, VCs, government and policy logically wants to come together and participate in the growth. So it creates a virtuous cycle. That itself is a powerful source of strength. What is also beautiful for us is we also look at innovation as innovation for India and innovation for the world. A large part of startups, especially in the last 3-4 years, have also been able to look at innovation for Indian markets because there are large problems to be solved. There are large market opportunities to be targeted. Increasingly, referenceability in Indian markets is being respected globally. Probably a few years back, if you had a product which worked in India, it may, or it was well deployed in India, because the market dynamics are so different, it may not have got the same acceptance in global markets. Today, because of the maturity and sophistication of the Indian customer and the Indian buyer, and they're not one customer, they're fragmented, sophisticated, layered customers, that respect in global markets is there. So, which means an Indian innovation, while gaining local domestic credibility, can target global markets. The other wave that we've seen for 10-12 years now is Indian startups fundamentally innovating for global markets. And while that started off in the pure software and tech space, today we see education startups, fintech startups, healthcare startups, robotic startups, semiconductor startups that from day zero are targeting global markets. And that is a beautiful place to be, and it's a very interesting phenomenon to observe. So we potentially have a hub to solve for our own economic priorities as a country and solve for global opportunities.
Amazing. Coming back to our NSRCEL incubation program, you would have seen a lot of successful stories. How do you measure the success? And I would also want to ask, are there any projects that are really close to your heart, be it a success story or be it a team or an idea that inspired you a lot in the past 3.5 years of your journey here?
That's like asking which of your children are your favorite children, and if I pick one name, the other siblings will kill me. But to grapple with what you said, for us, when we look at startup journeys and we want to measure the difference that we have made to startup journeys, longitudinally, what we are looking at is two metric. The first is survival rate. Survival rate for the founder, not necessarily the venture, which means if the founder remains an entrepreneur, you've created career entrepreneurship, which means the founder will take the venture through its journey, or if the first venture pivots, the second venture will take off. And we've got some beautiful examples of you tried a first idea, tried it for a couple years, it didn't do well, your second idea, your third idea has been hockey stick, which means we've created strong founder resilience to stay entrepreneurial irrespective of a specific idea's purchase in the market. So for us, tracking longitudinal survival rate is an important metric. Along with that, we track economic metrics, which is some of the things we spoke about: revenue, number of jobs created, number of customers acquired, number of beneficiaries if you're a social impact venture, number of beneficiaries you have touched, number of lives that you have touched longitudinally. So those are longitudinal metrics that we track over a 1 to 3 year window. During the incubation, we track for two scorecards that we've developed, what we call the Entrepreneurial Development Index and the Venture Development Index. The Entrepreneur Development Index tracks for growth in mindsets. Is the founder now more confident of A, B, C, D, E? So from the time you started an incubation, am I, for example, more confident of meeting an investor, hiring a high quality team, securing the right kind of partnerships, working through ambiguous data sets or information to take decisions? So the level of confidence of a founder through incubation is what we measure through the Entrepreneur Development Index. The Venture Development Index tracks the maturity of the venture through its growth. Is the venture now able to, for example, create new offices, work with partners and distributors, has good policies and practices, so on and so forth, right? Has created customer acquisition, customer retention methodologies. So has the venture developed in its maturity, which means have their systems, processes, methods matured to give them some sustenance and scale. But what, as an incubator, I'm inspired by is first the entrepreneurial mindset, sheer tenacity. I don't have a business background, and running retail food operations is extremely resource intensive, operations intensive, cost intensive, high risk, requires whole set of food certifications, regulatory compliance. Just imagining and running that business is not easy. So it requires tenacity. It requires you to rapidly create a team capabilities, systems, methods, processes to run the company. By the way, all of this is being done by disabled people, which means you got to train someone to be a barista. You got to train someone to make a cheesecake. You got to make someone to handle a POS machine and collect cash, and so on and so forth. Handle vendors. Get supplies at 4 o'clock in the morning to your centralized kitchen. Make sure the truck is loaded and distributed out to from your central kitchen to all your stores in a city, and you're running 13 city operations. All of this is run by disabled people, which means you got to bring in whatever I called in theory operational readiness for an enterprise like this. Then you've got to build a brand, right? You're competing against some very powerful, established, sophisticated cafe brands in the country, and you're competing toe to toe. Your cheesecake has to be as good as the cheesecake in your neighboring cafe. That's when your customer patronizes your brand, right? The empathy lasts for a period. Beyond that, the proposition has to stand for itself, which means your food has to be better than your neighbor. You're willing to stand toe to toe and compete with global brands, MNCs that you talked about, brilliant otherwise cafe entrepreneurs or food and beverage entrepreneurs in the country, which requires strategic mindset. So if I take it all together, this learning on entrepreneurship is a powerful learning. No, there's nothing complicated. There's no IP, there's no patent, there's no deep tech. That's fine. But imagine this as an innovation that has sustained and scaled, and if God's kind will scale even more. That is a learning.
And it's a lot of passion to put through, right, over years.
So passion that needs to exist, needs to sustain, and the journey is not easy. Ma'am Alina has gone through her own sine curve of learning. Staying the course, building organizational capabilities. Today she says, if I go on vacation for a month, nothing will happen, the business will run. Now that is entrepreneurial thinking, right? So there is I, and then there is the corporate, and the proposition is now deconstructed. Now I can focus on other things to scale and create impact. The corporate sustains in a meaningful manner. That is true mature entrepreneurial thinking. I think that is inspiring for us to learn, right? Outside of the impact story, the entrepreneurship story is
This story
valuable
itself
to learn
is
from.
fascinating. It's amazing.
So that's one example of, what do we get inspired by? We get inspired by, like I said, the person, the
person.
entrepreneur.
That particular mindset.
The founder at the center means a lot to us.
Coming to a completely contrast topic, what is the survival rate of incubators incubated at NSRCEL?
Our anecdotal numbers are our survival rate is about 70%. Flip, the industry mortality rate for especially tech and deep tech products is 70%. So for us, flipping the statistic is a powerful motivator. If the mortality is 70% and survival is 30%, can I flip it and say, no, if you're getting incubated at NSRCEL, your survival over at least a 3-year window should be 70%. There's a lot of work that goes behind this, and I think there's a lot of continuous work that needs to get done. As we were speaking earlier, because the environment is so dynamic, working on founder survival and venture scaling is an everyday activity.
It's a huge job to carry on.
Yes.
You have come a long way with
Thank you.
diverse projects. So, what are you looking forward to at this point in life? With your NSRCEL project, of course.
I think if I look at our strategic purpose and an impact objective, direct incubation continues to be our core. And we will continue to work hands-on with innovators across the country and expand both geographic reach and contextual depth as much as possible. There are two additional opportunities that are coming out of this core. The first is a lot of knowledge has got created. A lot of this is tacit soft knowledge on what is the methodology for business incubation, what kind of case studies contextual to the Indian environment, entrepreneurial environment makes sense, what kind of founder stories help solve for specific problems that a founder might have, what kind of mentor engagements work and what kind of mentor relationships don't work. We are starting to codify all of this knowledge in a knowledge hub. While we're starting the knowledge hub as an internal hybrid learning methodology for NSRCEL's incubation, I think sometime through the course of the next few months, we would like to open it up to the broader Indian entrepreneurship ecosystem. Saying, here is what we've learned about business incubation and entrepreneurial learning within an Indian context, and maybe other incubators and other founders can benefit from it. So we'd like to open source the knowledge as much as we use that knowledge for our own incubation sophistication. The second is, because we've been a business incubator over 23 years, maybe we've made few mistakes. At least we've learned the things not to do. We may or may not know the good things to be done in business incubation, but maybe we know the 20 things that one should not do. We have started codifying this. We have created our own incubation methodology that we call ECNA. It's been trademarked. We've taken this methodology, wrapped it around a consulting framework, and we are now going to young incubators in the country, young engineering colleges, medical colleges, humanities universities, who have a passion for entrepreneurship, who have an incubator which is maybe 2 or 3 years old. So they're still in that process or stage of crystallizing before they can get to scale. Can we guide them to rapidly reach their position of scale? Which means if we are able to incubate 1,200 ventures in a year, by sharing our knowledge with other incubators in the country, can we, in some form of a hub and spoke, magnify this impact? Right? Can I have similar incubators in the Northeast, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Tirunelveli that we are speaking about,
accessible,
right? And which means the knowledge of business incubation, if I have 1.25 lakh ventures and I have 1,000 incubators, somewhere if I can create sophisticated incubation capability through the knowledge that we have by helping young incubators, maybe the opportunity to scale can be dramatic.
In fact, that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, exponentially, the growth is happening in the startup ecosystem, but your virtual programs, virtual incubations, and industry and partnerships have also been growing equally. In what way are you ready to expand that part of it?
So, what I spoke about, which is what we call our Incubating Incubators Initiative, or iCube, is taking together all of our product assets, which is our incubation methodology, our partner networks, our startup kit, our funding networks, our corporate partnerships, crystallizing it almost like a product, and offering that to a young incubator, saying here are core product capabilities that can quickly accelerate your incubation journey. By the way, our methodology we will handhold you through a consulting framework for the course of at least 12 months. We will work with you to get you from stage A to stage B, which means what took us 23 years to get to in a good or bad manner, maybe you can get there in 12, 18 months. And that is an accelerated impact for the broader national ecosystem. So we are trying to productize our knowledge, wrap it around with a consulting framework, and that iCube initiative, I do hope, can magnify the impact that NSRCEL creates.
And before I close the conversation, I definitely want to ask you to take us through the Impact Orbit, your social program for social entrepreneurship. Please show some light on that too.
About 15% of all of NSRCEL's work, 15-20% thereabouts, is specific to the impact sector, where we look at business models beyond commercial motivations to impact motivations, which means it could have a triple bottom line effect if it's a for-profit business model, or a purely impact effect if it is a not-for-profit business model. We are agnostic to for-profit and not-for-profit business models in the impact space. There are slight changes to the way we engage with social impact innovators. The theory of change, beneficiary trust, funding, fundraising, capitalization, sustainability are additional critical dimensions to think about when we look at social impact incubation. Also, sectoral nuances are very peculiar. Education behaves slightly different from affordable healthcare, behaves slightly different from skilling or livelihoods or working with artisanal communities. Agri income, farm community income, and farm productivity are slightly nuanced. Working on circularity, working on ecological poverty or ecological migration is nuanced. So the nuance of sectoral behaviors in the impact space is also peculiar. So we are very cognizant of bringing in as much of contextual nuance within the social impact space. Over the last 6 years, we have engaged with over 110 social impact ventures. We hope to reach another 200 in the next 3 years, simply because of the sheer volume of work that needs to be done and sheer power of social impact innovators which are out there. Corporate crossovers, university and college innovation, grassroots innovators who are coming back. We see a beautiful flow of people who've done reasonable career stints in global companies abroad, and coming back to India and saying, now my calling is to work, take all of my knowledge in building scaled ventures or creating great technology products in the impact space in the country. And we are seeing a wonderful flow of talent, global talent coming back to India in the impact space. All of that taken together forms our social impact work. The other thing we're trying to do, in addition to our ecosystem building in the impact space, is create a right consortium for impact fundraising. Philanthropic capital, family foundations. Of course, equity impact ventures are a very large part of the entire ecosystem, but we're trying very hard to bring in philanthropic capital, family foundations, alternative financing. We've started working in some form with the social stock exchange to see if that could be a channel for some of our impact, especially for-profit impact ventures. So we're also comfortable. Blended finance is an interesting experiment we're trying. We're also trying to bring in alternative methods of financing in a sustainable manner, a social impact venture. And some of that is the work that is being done in Impact Orbit.
As you run through the topics, there is no sector that NSRCEL is not like doing. As of my knowledge, I see you are like literally in every sector, expanding and rooting it. So
you are very kind. I think it is not as much by intent, but by a derived impact, because we are seized with our reach ambition, which is any innovator anywhere in the country that can benefit from incubation needs to have that opportunity, and we should be there and available for him, either directly or now with our iCube incubation, maybe through our other co-incubation partners, which means we have to be sector inclusive. right? Or as much as is practical, there are still some deep tech sectors that we shy away from because we believe we are not yet ready. I do believe we will get ready, but there are still some clusters that we believe we are not yet ready. The contextual nuances are too deep for us to enter in, and we want to do a job which is reasonably meaningful. So it might take some time. But having said that, any founder that reaches out to NSRCEL, we want to build an ecosystem that supports the founder, which means we have to be inclusive, either through our partner networks, of course, through the knowledge capital of IIM Bangalore, or through our own capability. We have to be as inclusive to technology, business model, industry as possible.
I think I've also missed talking about the rural women of Karnataka, where you have done, I mean, you have been doing a
Yes.
Swavalamban program
Yes.
where women entrepreneurs are being incubated here and supported through NSRCEL.
Yes.
Can you share
It's
few
a
details
pilot
about?
that we are engaging with the National Rural Livelihood Mission NRLM and their Karnataka arm Sanjeevani SRLM. It's a pilot of for about 150 micro businesses, women-led self-help groups or product-led micro businesses, almost by design non-farm. So non-farm women-led micro businesses. Can we even imagine an incubation model that might help them? And these are businesses that you need to engage at premise. And a lot of sort of the entrepreneurial managerial jargon that we talk about is very often irrelevant in that context. You have to find a way to translate that
How do
to
you train rural women who probably cannot communicate
which
the
is
way
why
you want?
absolutely, so which is why it's a pilot. So we've tried to build in methodologies where we use the same principles of incubation that we spoke about, which is market validation, product market fit, operational readiness, governance, but the way we translate it is extremely contextual. No jargon, no sciences, no complicated terms. Anybody can understand product pricing now, or the quality of packaging, or the importance of
What exactly is
GST
needed
filing
for
and
them.
compliance. No, I don't need to go and tell them governance is important.
Correct.
But can I work with them in figuring out how you can do meaningful GST compliance? The value of even a GST number if you want to bid for, let us say, government contracts. That is can be done if you're willing to create that translation bridge. It's been a year of pilot for us. We've learned a lot through the pilot. We've also learned that in addition to being contextually relevant, half the challenge in working with micro entrepreneurs is life skills, which is can you also guide them on financial security, avoiding health shocks, managing personal finances and personal livelihood pressures in addition to running a venture. Because you're talking about a self-help group or a woman-led product business. Very often these are 2, 5, 7, 10 typically family members or neighbors who are working with the founder. They're not sophisticated from the kind of technology, etc., that we imagine, but they're potentially highly impactful for livelihood creation and sustaining income. That nuance has to be embedded within incubation. So it's been a tremendous learning for us.
If you can reach out, that economic growth of that rural areas automatically is just taken
I do
care
hope
of.
so. I do hope so. And I think the government of Karnataka has an ambition now from all of this learning to sort of, we are documenting all of our learnings. We are handing it over to the SRM in Karnataka. They have a very fascinating ambition to scale it across the state from the learnings of the pilot. And we are very hopeful that the government's initiative to scaling will be successful and impactful.
Let's hope so. Finally, closing the thoughts with the work NSRCEL has been doing over 23 years has dominantly placed Bangalore on the world map as the startup incubator hub. And it's amazing to see that Bangalore is recognized through this in a way. And how do you see that journey? And how do you see your 3 years being here has changed you as a person? I've added it to NSRCEL's growth. And how do you want to sum it up? Because somewhere this has been the spine of Bangalore. The startup hub has created a lot
Yes, it
more
has.
impact than probably they would have started. The vision could be probably more, but the impact has been a lot more.
True.
So how do you summarize that?
See, for NSRCEL, while we don't look at ourselves as geography centric, we happen to be sitting in Bangalore because you have to sit somewhere, and we'd like to be looking at nation scale impact. The value that the Bangalore ecosystem has added to NSRCEL is tremendous, right? We spoke about the virtuous cycle here.
Yeah.
Talent, partners, investors, corporate, other incubators, academic capital, science and technology,
Name
the
it all.
ISC, the triple ITs, which are a drive away, not an easy drive, but still a drive away, is an extremely powerful, virtuous ecosystem. We learn a lot from that ecosystem. Very shamelessly, we work with our partners, learn from them, adopt the practices that they do, see if we can scale good things that they do, reach out to them when we are struggling and they're very comfortable helping, co-incubating, guiding, supporting. That comes only, like they say, it takes a village, especially in the case of incubation ecosystems based out of Bangalore. The village is truly coming together. The beauty is that we are able to take the Bangalore ecosystem and flip it nation scale. As opposed to looking inward, I think we, maybe because of our board or because of the wisdom of IIM Bangalore and my team, we imagine that the value belongs to the country. And we don't think in an insular manner, but we shamelessly learn a lot from the Bangalore ecosystem. Benefit from it. I do hope we give back in whatever small way we do. I do hope we are also contributing to the virtuous cycle of the ecosystem. The upside again is very large. The amount of work that today entrepreneurship, the same economic survey that we were talking about and another research that was done last year, from 2016 to today, if you look at India's GDP growth, research says between 5 to 6% has contributed to that economic growth. There are global peers, Taiwan, you spoke about, Israel earlier, South Korea, where entrepreneurship has contributed to economic growth much more dramatically. Which means if I had to benchmark, imagining them as our peers in some form, our upside potential is very high. The potential for entrepreneurship and innovation to contribute to economic growth, societal impact, can be multifold the place that we are in right now. And that is a beautiful place to be. If we can continue the energy that we have, grow that energy to whatever we are doing, whatever the policy environment is doing, whatever our peers are doing, bring it together. As they say, maybe within our generation, we'll be able to see that sea change. And today we're talking single digit contribution. Why can't it be larger double digit contribution to India's economic growth through entrepreneurship and innovation? And I do see that happening. If we stay the course, we play the long game, and as we are inspired by our founders, tenacious about it, I think the potential is immense.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, all the details, and glad of NSRCEL team to bringing in such talent from IITs and IIMs to be the team. You yourself are an IIT and an IIM, right? So your
Archana,
experience.
you're being very kind. The center is a powerful place. The center is a beautiful place. And in so many ways, I'm blessed to be involved in this center and be part of the journey that it has experienced. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for thinking of NSRCEL. And thank you so much for featuring.
Thank you for your team and especially your time. And thank you so much for your detailed information that you have given. And we really value your time.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.